I remember about that when we got ready to play playoffs this time, is saying that we were not going to be conservative, that we were going to try and let it all hang out against whoever we play.
And I'm sure a lot of people probably did see us play those first 4 games or so and say, yeah, they're not very good this year. It's a rebuilding year or something like that.
I guess it's just something you just have to watch and wonder how or why. And there's a lot of things you just watch about that and go, how, why, where did that come from? You know, why did that happen?
And the events of the last couple of minutes of this contest, you simply had to be here to believe it. I hope I gave you a halfway decent description of what happened.
Ironton was a booming town at that time. Business was good, jobs was plentiful. Social media, no social media. You know, everybody got along, playgrounds full, and it was just a good place to live at that time. Nice place to grow up.
We all lived down on Washington Street, and we weren't allowed up past the projects. We weren't allowed up that way because they used to call this place Little Chicago. We all went through the same motions as coming up. You know, I was a river rat, you know, just like the rest of them. If we wasn't fishing, we wasn't on this football field, we was running them hillsides over there. It's a beautiful town to raise your kids. It is.
It was a wonderful blue collar, growing up period. My brother and I. My dad worked on one of the plants here in town. My mom worked at Wilson's, made 82,000 baseball gloves.
Yeah, the job situation is definitely a little bit different than what it was. You know, you had Armco, Marathon, Malibu, the railroad, you know, just all of that is gone.
Yeah, it seemed like everyone's dad worked at a plant. My dad worked at Armco Steel for 30 years or so. A great place to grow up. I loved it. It wasn't a tiny little place, you know, 15,000 people, but it was big. I could go from one end of the city to the other, you know, riding my bike or whatever. Sports crazy, and that's all I ended up doing most of the time, was just playing ball. Going out playing pickup basketball, wiffle ball, sandlot football. So, and then we were also just crazy about the high school. Even before I got here, I attended all the games.
I think football made the town. I mean, Friday night in the tank, there was no other time other than that. You know, as a kid growing up, you know, I can remember the '72 team. That's when I started paying attention to football, and I was one of those kids that sat in the stadium under the handrail, you know, and after the game, you know, they'd allow the kids out on the field, and man, you thought these guys was heroes. You'd run down as a kid and you'd try to get a chin strap, an autograph, a mouthpiece, and you know, that's when I knew, you know, that's what I wanted to be.
The thing that has stuck with me all these years and I've learned from, and even though you're a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids in little old Ironton High playing a silly game, that moment where we weren't the biggest, the fastest, we didn't have, you know, everything that a lot of bigger programs had. They certainly had a whole lot better athletes at times, but just that lightning struck, that one moment when everything clicked. What I was lacking, someone else had. What they were lacking, someone else picked up on.
Great team starts with a great coaching staff, and all the coaches were spot on, you know, from Coach Luce to his assistants, you know. There could have been a lot of egos because those coaches, all of them could have been head coaches somewhere.
I'd say we had the best coaching staff in the state of Ohio. You know, Coach Lutz is like the general.
Mike Burcham, the most incredible motivator I've ever come across.
It was almost, I had the feel sometimes of him and Lutz being co-head coaches.
One of my favorite Lutz memories was, I think maybe I was a sophomore, but we went to Martin's Ferry and we pull up and the gate's locked. So I think it was Coach Burcham maybe got off the bus, unlocked the gate and opened it, and Coach Lutz said, just drive it around and put it on the field. So drove the school, the Tiger bus onto the field, laid on the horn, and it might have been Coach Fugit said, what are we doing? And he said, just letting them know we're here.
Well, I do remember him during preseason practice in August, '79, and we didn't have many on the team to begin with, and then one particular practice, a two-day practice, we were missing like 7 guys were sitting out because of little nagging injuries. And let's just say he didn't approve of it. I can't exactly, I'm not going to quote him because this is supposed to be G-rated, but it was, that's what I remember. He showed us his scar from his knee surgery and more or less questioned our manhood and our toughness.
One of his sayings, you know, we was a close-knit group. I mean, we all grew up together, and that's the thing about living in a small town. You all grow up together and play together. And we was always into something, you know. I remember one time he walked in the locker room and, you know, you had the gas lights in the ceiling, and a few of them got busted, let's just put it that way. So he walks in, he looks around, you know, he looks up, and shakes his head, and he gave us this line a couple times, all the way to the bitter end, you know, and he just walks out. So at the end of the year, at the awards assembly, we, you know, after the championship, we made a plaque and we put on it, all the way to the bitter end.
Good bunch of kids, you know, typical Ironton kids, not anybody flashy, you know, just tough kids, you know, physical. We weren't always the most talented, but we was going to give you a good effort.
So maybe everyone else on the outside didn't think we'd do very well, but we went into it fully confident. We didn't really talk about it. I think it was just an expectation we had back then that, hey, we're going to be fine, we're Ironton.
Again, I think we were one of the smallest AA schools in the state, you know, and so there's a lot who didn't expect big things from us. We'd lost a lot of players from the previous year, so we were inexperienced in many ways compared to other teams that we played. But we had a Greyhound bus, and we played in a former pro football stadium, and we had that $1 million band. So we didn't know that we were supposed to be underdogs. I know that people considered us inexperienced and young, but we were scrappy and we had a desire to win. And all that really matters is that we thought of ourselves as winners.
Probably the year before, with Robert Clay, Womack, Rodney Boykin, they were as good a team as we had. They didn't make it. Went undefeated, just didn't get enough. Somebody had a strike. That team was probably better than '79.
We wanted to carry on what the '78 team didn't accomplish. I think they was robbed from the playoffs.
I think that every season that Ironton football goes into, they're expected to do well.
You know, playing for this program, we got a shot. Every year we have a chance. We want to go undefeated. If we're in the league, we want to win the league. We want to qualify for the playoffs, and we want to win the state. He told me one time, he goes, sometimes I wish we could just go off in a lot somewhere and play the other team we're supposed to play. No crowds, no distractions, just my best guys against their best guys and see what happens.
Yeah, as far as us possibly or could have been 0-3 after the first 3 games, that's true. Ashland, we only beat them 6-0.
Anytime you go into Putnam Stadium, it's always been a rivalry. It's going to be a tough game. I don't care if both teams haven't won a game all season. It's going to be tough.
Brent made a lot of strides quarterbacking, being a junior.
Brent Wilcoxon, my quarterback from starting back in middle school. One time we calculated how many snaps I'd given him, how many times I'd centered the ball to him, and it was in the thousands and thousands. A true student of the game, worked as hard or harder than anyone on the team.
It was just a tough game. We were up, and I remember Ashland drove down to about the 6-yard line late in the game, and we're out of timeouts.
Our defense was still curtain. Still curtain and all that was going on at the time. You do your job. You come here, you get on this team, you do your job, and everything will come out fine.
Crank option to my side, and I stretched him to the outside, and shoestring tackled him. He fumbles the ball, but he jumps on it, time runs out, and we win the game. So our second game of the season, we have Portsmouth Trojans at home.
Portsmouth's always, that's what it was. Knock down, drag out fight.
You could tell the mood in the coach's office almost as soon as you came in. That place was like this. And the other coaches were walking on cracked eggshells. Because they knew Mr. Lutz was wound tighter than a $3 alarm clock.
Portsmouth was athletic, always athletic, and I knew a couple guys that played for them that were backs, Jim and Donnie Richardson, and very good backs. And Brett Wilcoxon, our starting quarterback, was out.
That's the only game I ever missed. I never missed a practice or game or anything, but I had strep throat, and I could barely walk without throwing up. It was bad.
Steve Sutton, he stepped up and filled in and did a heck of a job.
Yeah, Steve, that was his first start. He was like a Swiss Army knife. He played everything. He played running back, end, quarterback. He was really, really smart, and I think he just knew every position. But yeah, and then he got thrown in the fire that second game, and he came through.
I wasn't as big as Brent, or could throw the ball as well as he could. And this is where I think our coaches are, in many ways, geniuses. They basically create a game plan around my skill set, what I could do on the field, as well as all the other players that we had. Again, guys stepped up and did what they needed to do. Tim Hodges, Terry Royal, Joe Fletcher, Joe Hacker, Darwin Conwell, Scott Willis. The list goes on.
The game went back and forth, tight, and late in the game, Portsmouth was up on us.
But in the end, we were able to march the ball down the field at the end of the game. And again, I still see Fletch in the end zone waving his big arm, so I was able to get in the ball. He had a great game.
Joe Fletcher was a leader. He led by example. Yes, exactly.
Joe seemed, as a person, just wise beyond his years. He's kind of quiet, didn't say a whole lot, was truly you set the tone.
Third game of the season, we go to Washington Courthouse, and if my memory serves me correct, we had like 3 starters out. I know we had Gabe Lewis out, Joe Hacker was out, and there was somebody else was out, and so, but you know, it's next man up, so.
Oh, 13-13. I died a little bit there.
Washington Courthouse, we tied them 13-13, and I have bad memories about that game because their tying touchdown, well, I gave it to them. Okay, I threw a pick 6, throwing a Joe Fletcher, throwing him on an out route, which has to be low and outside, but I threw it inside, and the guy picked it off and took it to the house, and ended up tying him 13-13. And yeah, as far as us being 0-3, that possibility, sure, it could have happened.
We kind of had a sour taste in our mouth after that game. I think we turned things around after that.
But I'm sure a lot of people probably did see us play those first 4 games or so and say, yeah, they're not very good this year. It's a rebuilding year or something like that.
And we kind of dominated the second half, and from that, we rolled on through the SCOAL until the last game of the season, which was Jackson.
I believe that's the game where Tim Hodges threw me about a 6-yard touchdown pass. And but he came to me a month before he passed away. And he gave me a video, excuse me. Tim, he found him. He found that play. So he gave it to me.
Tim was the typical Ironton fullback.
He's kind of like maybe the whole rallying point behind that team because didn't have incredible speed, didn't have incredible, anything. But where we were lacking at whatever moment, whatever play, and it was weird, he would rise to that occasion, it seemed like constantly.
Tim Hodges, he was a beast. He was a beast. I mean, his legs never quit moving. And with his chest and his shoulders, he could move mountains.
We fought as a team. The whole team kind of stood out. We were undersized in a lot of areas, especially on the line. What really stood out to me is offensive line, especially on our guards. Scott Willis, Adam Ainsworth, my brother John, they played guard, center. My brother John Lewis played on the other side, the nose guard, and all those guys were 170 pounds or less.
Gabe, first thing comes to mind is hard hitting. I mean, he's what, 160-pound linebacker, something like that. And he would take on the biggest backs and just deck them.
Gabriel was as tough as kid as you want. I remember we were playing Athens at home, and maybe the hardest hit I've ever seen.
The hardest I think I've ever been hit in high school ball was by Gabe Lewis.
Terry Will was one of the quickest backs that ever played here at Ironton.
No, Jackson was actually picked to win the league that year.
That was for all the marbles. That's for the league championship and for a playoff berth. So no, if we lost any of those games, I haven't done the math, but I'm 100% sure we wouldn't have made the playoffs. Back in those days, you had to have some credentials to make the playoffs. Only the top team in each region made it.
It was at home, and kind of slowed down our running game because it poured. The field was a mess.
Jackson game, it rained all day, rained all night. It was a mud bowl.
My takeaway from that was I think I was beat up more after that game than any other one. It was physically just a hard-hitting game.
I think Hodges, he ran I don't know how many times, but he was the workhorse of the game. He scored on a long touchdown run.
And we ended up winning 7-0. But whoever won that game was going to win the SCOL and go to the playoffs.
I think it had been a surprisingly good season for Ironton by the time the regular season came to an end. You have 4 teams that make it into playoffs in 1979 in AA football, and the Tigers are one of them. And they match up with Hamilton-Baden, and it's Mr. Lutz's philosophy. And he said this in the media, and he told his coaches, I'm sure, and his ball club, we're going to go in with a little bit different attitude in the playoffs. Guns blazing, not holding anything back. We're gonna go full bore.
I thought the first few playoff games that we were in, the first couple of years, I was a little bit hesitant on opening the game up a little bit. That's kind of a surprise that people would think that I really opened it up, but I did more than I did in the early games because I played too close to the vest. And in the semifinal game, I ran some play action and bootlegs in clutch situations that were big plays for it. And that's what I was referring to, that I wouldn't hesitate to go with any kind of play if the situation warrants.
Of course, back then you only had one winner, 4 teams qualified, and we get to play Baden the next week. Tough opponent, very well coached. Bob ended up breaking his record, Terry Malone's record for most wins.
First playoff game, we played Hamilton-Baden at Groveport.
They were runner-up the previous year, and they come out, we were warming up. And the thing I remember mostly about that game is we were on the field first, they come out and circle around us, and there was some controversy about which side you warm up on. And like they were trying to intimidate us. And, you know, we wasn't backing down from nobody.
Looked bad at halftime. They were beating us 6-0 at halftime. We had done nothing all game, the whole half. And then the second half, we outscored them 21-0.
Had been outplayed by Hamilton-Baden in the first half, but came out and was like a completely different ball club in the second half. Gabriel Lewis had a tremendous game, but the team as a whole, and they just basically shut down Hamilton-Baden.
And then we're on to the championship. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving. We traveled to Akron, St. Vincent, St. Mary. We were playing in the Akron Rubber Bowl. So, you know, we're playing in their backyard.
It was literally their home stadium. So on top of everything else, it was a home game for them, literally.
I don't think anybody in the world thought we would win. I had heard, you know, people mumble or talk. I just hope we don't get up there and get embarrassed.
These guys were big, they were athletic.
They were big. They outmanned us, outweighed us probably 30 to 40 pounds. Yeah, when they took the field, I thought Notre Dame was coming out on the field.
We hit the field and they came out, and they were about the biggest human beings I'd ever seen in my life. I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here?
You know, they were, I think, 265, 255 across the line. Our biggest guy was Joe Hacker, 215.
We knew it'd be a tall task because they were just so enormous.
It was like they were all carbon copy. They were all like 6'3", 250, 60 pounds. And it seemed like the quarterback was that big and the running backs were that big. And I think their place kicker was bigger than anyone we had on our team.
In the stadium, I remember we were on, I'll say, the left end of the stadium, and their locker room was down on the right-hand side. And but I remember seeing one of their players, big offensive lineman, it looked like you couldn't see anything between the sides of his helmet. It was just glued to his head. He was so enormous.
And we could not play the standard defense against the way as big as they were. So we kind of modified our defense to kind of sick them a little bit and get after them.
And they always said the teams up north were a lot better than the teams down south. We had something to prove. we had something to prove that football is not just a Northern Ohio thing. It's Southern Ohio, we play just as hard and sometimes harder.
Of course, a little nervous, AA championship, a young Tiger squad who not expected to be any place like this, certainly back in August, September, and maybe even in October before they really turned it on. But
Well, I hope it's not in a selfish way, but I remember the first play really well. We called it T59C. It was an option. I faked to Tim, going to the left, and then I had, I ran option with Terry, and I ended up keeping the ball. And I just take a little pride in the fact that me and this guy went head to head, and I got the best of it. And I think it may have surprised him a little bit.
And so you fans back home listening, there is one heck of a crowd here from Ironton. They followed them all the way up here, and that really has to help a team out a whole lot, Rick.
The atmosphere there was awesome. It was like a college atmosphere. Of course, it was at a college stadium.
Maybe not in number, but in noise level and enthusiasm, we had it more so than they did. I think they sort of assumed they were going to win.
Will Coxon wants to throw in the flat. Vic Williams catches the football, cuts back across the green. He's giving up yardage. He's in trouble, and he's going to be brought back inside the 10. Vic got it on the left side. Clock rolling inside, 3 minutes to play the first quarter. We are scoreless. Kind of a ticklish situation coming up here. Tim Hodges is going to have to punt the football. Hodges gets the punt away, and it knuckles off the side of his foot, takes it Ironton bounce, goes out of bounds at about the Tiger 37. So the Fighting Irish will have field advantage, and really one of the first breaks of the contest. They'll have it in Tiger territory.
The game plan from our coaches, they just had an awesome plan. John Lewis was our nose guard, 160 pounds. So he was giving up 60, 70 pounds. But the coaches told him, I'll never forget it, they said, dig earthworms, go straight to the ground. So what that did, that just plugged up the middle and then wait for help.
And the thing about it was, what we played was perfect if they would think that they could just run the ball right down our throats in the game. If they kept that attitude up, then we had a chance. But if they wanted to start throwing the ball and doing play action passes, we would have been a world of hurt. And they didn't realize that that's what they had to do until the game was over.
Handoff goes in the counter play. That is Bushko with the football. He's down inside the 10, still driving down to about the 6. First and goal to go from the 5-yard line. Fighting Irish with the football on the Tiger 5. Counter play, upset in the backfield.
We actually out-hit them, which no one would have dreamed that going into that game, at least no on the outside.
I formation with a wing back to the left. Handoff goes to Jay Dash, and he's wrapped up by the headhunter, Gabriel Lewis.
Well, Gabe was just, I'm going to describe Gabe. Gabe was tenacious, man. Gabe went through like 4 face masks that season. When Gabe rolled up on you, you better be ready. You better hold on to your hat. And I just happened to look over at him in the huddle. Everybody's hands on their knees, and I just happened to glance over at Gabe, and his knee pads were gone. And I'm thinking, and the outside pocket was just shreds. This guy he played hard, man. This guy, he just went 100% every down.
He led with his face. One of the hardest hitters I've ever played with. As a matter of fact, in the state championship game, he hit somebody so hard that then his face mask over to the side. And when it was right before he scored that touchdown, he came over and got my helmet to put on because he couldn't see the bar was in his face.
Third down, goal to go from the 5. Long count. Gator gets the football. He gets that ball loose, popping around about the 5-yard line. Still going for the football. And the Tigers have got it. Let's see what they do this time. Will Coxon wants to throw on first down. Back in the pocket, looking down deep. Now he's in trouble. He's going to be brought back inside the 35.
I'll be very honest with you, Rick. I got beat like I stole something. I've never been so physically abused in all my life. The boy I was up against was he was either 260 or 270, 6'4". I would fire out on him as hard as I possibly could, and he would swat me away with one arm, just right into the AstroTurf. So, long about a quarter and a half of that, my ego's starting to go on me, So I thought, well, I'm going to fix him. I hit him, I remember, as hard as I possibly could. The next thing I remember is getting up off the ground after he had leveled me, and he was 5 yards that way, right in Tim Hodges' face. I thought, boys, we're going to have a problem tonight.
They just beat Ironton at the line. There must have been 6 guys coming through there, and Hodges, no way in the world he could have got it
We
off.
knew we had the speed, we knew we had the strength. My only concern was endurance, because we were playing both ways. Most of our players played both ways, a couple, and only a couple of their players played both ways. So my biggest concern was that I still had what I needed at the end of the game to win it.
First down, Akron wants to throw. Porter with the man. Kicked off by Terry Wall at the 10. He gets off the 10, the 15, the 20. What a defensive battle it has been, and at halftime the score is 0-0.
I'm dog tired. Everybody on that field played their heart out. I go into the half, and Coach Lutz is standing there waiting for everybody to come in, And so I remember looking up at him, and he gives me a nod like, we're okay. And I'm like, well, we're okay.
All the coaches on the Ironton staff have the ability to reach right into your chest and pump your heart for you. They did that all year, and certainly that's what we needed when we went out for the second half. I'm sure Brian would agree. Outnumbered, outweighed.
Here they came up with a couple of clutch defensive plays in the first half, in addition to pretty much slugging it out with a bigger Fighting Irish offensive line. And they're going to have to do more of the same here in the second half.
And they're kind of getting pounded on, but they're giving it back pretty good too. And I'm sure Akron St. Vincent St. Mary, their coaches and their ball players saying, who are these guys? Just like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Who are these guys?
Here in the second half, that unbalanced line, now wingback moves to the left. Porter, the quarterback, pitches it, coming his way. That's Gaydash with the football. Coming out across the 35, he's pinned in, turned in, now to, Joe Hager really lowered the boom.
He was just so amped up for that game. I mean, every play, he was just like berserk. And he made the big hit on Gaydash, I think it was. And he got up, and that just electrified the place.
Yeah, that's Joe. When you look at this, you see Joey right here. I mean, this is what he did. He was going to give you 110.
He was a junkyard dog. That's what I'm going to put for Joe Hager. He would bite you.
But it was a nail-biting, play-to-play game.
It's going to be third down, goal to go for the Tiger 5. Gaydash with the football. Gaydash is into the end zone. Flags are going to fly.
We jumped off sides on the extra point. They kicked the extra point, good. But the penalty, they took the penalty and moved the ball half the distance to the goal, and so they decided to go for 2. That was their mistake.
Handoff goes to Briscoe. Pitch goes to Gaydash. He's dropped. Tiger defense rises to the occasion. So, with 6:48 to go, Tigers stop him on the extra point. That's the end of the third quarter of play here at the River Bowl in Akron, Ohio. AA championship game. Our score: St. Vincent St. Mary 6, Ironton 0. Pitch goes to Hodges. Hodges wants to throw, and he's dropped ball. Pops loose and picked up by Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. And Wilcox makes the tackle about the 35. Now we got a penalty on him. And a big clutch play there for Akron St. Vincent St. Mary, and a booming punt gets the Tigers back to their own 15. 50-yard punt. He was averaging 35 in the first game. Ironton trailing 6-0 this AA championship game, and it looks like we're going to be down to a nail-biter finish. Wilcoxon with Royal to the right. Pass over the middle is popped up in the air and picked off. Looks like picked off there by the linebacker at the 35. Pass intended for Joe Fletcher. Somebody got a paw on it, popped it up in the air. The Fighting Irish had the football.
And as that is developing, and it appears that the game is going to go in Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's favor, it's kind of like, as a broadcaster, you're thinking ahead, how can we sum up what we've seen here today? You think a little bit ahead.
They had a real good back named Jerry Gaydash, went on to play at Eastern Michigan.
Long count. Fumble, ball's loose. Bad scramble for it.
And he fumbled. with about 4 minutes left.
I think Joey, like I said, he was a little bit of a wild man. He may have taken it away from me, and I probably looked at him and saw it was a black jersey that was taking it. I didn't care who had it as long as we had it. So, yeah.
Tigers say they got a hitter. Yeah. Time's running out. They've got to get something going. Inside 3.5 minutes to play. Here we go.
I remember very clearly Fletch, Bubby Cat, Hodges, we're always saying, well, it's going to take more than 6 points to beat us. And we're here to play, and we're not going to go home not giving all we had.
What did Mr. Litz say before you guys went back out on the field and kind of started what's turned out to be known as the drive?
Well, if you remember, he really didn't say much. We stood there, he looked at us, and we almost had to take another timeout because he really didn't say anything. And, you know, we knew then, when he did start talking, that this is it. He said, this is it, guys. It's gut check. We got to go from there.
And then the magic starts to happen. It's just like a light switch turned on.
Started off kind of slow. We had to convert on third down. We just barely made it out to like their 32 or something like that.
I think Brett was like 6 for 6, you know, on that set of downs.
Makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Does now, just thinking about it.
First down and 10 for the Tigers, 37. Tigers with the football. Wilcoxon wants to throw, needs time, going long. Joe Fletcher out there. He made the catch. Unbelievable catch by Joe Fletcher. Inside the number 30. Whoa. Boy, talk about a major injection of adrenaline.
About a 35-yard catch, and he had two people around him. He had beat them both by one step, and that took a beautiful pass to put it in there.
Here we go.
I'll never forget it. It was my favorite play because, you know, at that time, you know, Coach Luke, we straight up the middle. Everybody knew the game plan. We was coming at you. There was nothing fancy. We was coming at you.
Initially, he seemed a little more open than what he ended up being.
So, you know, he throws the ball up in the air. And at first, I thought I was wide open, but man, it just happened so quick.
I didn't see it. I got decked. I mean, I got drilled. Helmet right here, and I didn't see it. All I saw was the sky.
I think it was like 32 yards to throw from Brent Wilcoxon to Joe Fletcher, and he takes the ball away from two defenders. But even the little dump passes to Tim Hodges and Terry Royal, they kind of kept things going. Just amazing.
To the right. Wilcoxon wants to throw. He's in trouble. Gets it out in the flat. Hodges makes the catch. He's down inside the 30, down inside the 25 to the 23 before he stops. And Brent Wilcoxon continues to
But, you know, I talk a little bit about David versus Goliath, but we had some good players on that team. We had Brent Wilcoxon, the quarterback, who improvised down the stretch and made great plays, ducking out of trouble.
I do remember after the play, the guy who tackled me, he looked at me and he said, "How'd you get that off?" I said, I remember I just said, "I don't know."
Like I say, each succeeding play topped the other, and then you're playing beat the clock.
48 seconds to go. Pace yourselves. Tigers with the football. First and 10 at the Akron 16. Another center. Drops back. Wants to throw. Needs time. Has Hodges. Hodges gets the ball. Inside the 10. Inside down to the 5. And he stopped. 39, 38. And they stop the clock. Tigers. They're going to have it. I think it's going to be first and goal from the 5.
I think I was getting ready to comment. I don't think Ironton has any timeouts left. They don't show it on the scoreboard up there, but I really don't think the Tigers have any timeouts left.
People may differ, but the last 2 or 3 plays of the drive, it was almost like they knew it was over. They quit. They had never been challenged like that, had never been put in that situation, didn't respond well to it. And I think that maybe they've been part of it. Had it been other way around, we've been there. We've been kicked and beat up and tired and bloodied, and we squeaked out many a game. It's no different. We got this. And we would kept fighting. But I genuinely think that at that moment, they quit. They lost their fire, lost their focus, lost their direction. And given our team, we've been there. Hell, we live there. No one gives us much credit down here. Plants close. There's been hardships. Each day, you just get up and do it. And maybe just from this community, that's that one more intangible that factored in there. There was no quit.
Wide receiver to the right, man in the slot. Fletcher, hands off to Lewis, he's in there! High ball game! Gabriel Lewis into the end zone. 31 seconds to play. Hold on to your transistors. They are going absolutely bananas. Oh, I wish you could be here, friend. This is great. We are tied at 6 apiece. And the Ironton congregation up and dancing in the aisles. The Ironton bench doing cartwheels.
I mean, I know everyone gets excited at touchdowns, but this was, I don't know how to describe it.
And, you could hear Rick Maney, he was doing the announcing. He's going crazy, man. Sounded like he fell out of his seat.
Well, clearly, I'm caught up in the moment. As a first-year professional sportscaster, and then this story's happening, overwhelmed that we're going to win the game. We got a shot to win the game. The play that ends up scoring a touchdown when Gabriel scored and Mortz had the kick out blocked on the side. Where were you on the field at that time, you remember?
I was through the hole before he was.
Okay, the lead block. And pretty big hole.
Well, it was a good size hole.
Fletcher, all those guys were there, and the hole was just there, and anybody could have ran through there. I wasn't touched, so you could have drove a car through there. So.
And they kicked the extra point twice. That was once is tough enough for a high school kid. Turn around and say, no, that doesn't count. You're gonna have to do it again.
If they're going to, we may have to do the extra point over again. Woo! I got to stand up, Jim. They're going to have to kick it again. It's against Ironton. Snap, kick is up. It's good. I completed. 31 seconds to go. Woo! Yeah.
that extra point done turned. That extra point done turned into a 50-yard field goal cry.
Well, first of all, we were all in shock that we had to kick it again. And because of the talented kicker we had, old Joe, Bubba put it right through. And I tell you, once again, it was kind of a Cinderella season. No one probably predicted that we would go that far. And all I remember is sitting there on the AstroTurf in November. It was a little bit cold, and it just, all the Ironton fans coming onto the field. It's a lifetime memory I'll never forget.
I remember going over to the bench afterwards, right before the kickoff, and there were people from the stands that were on our sideline just hugging me. I mean, just people just showed up. They decided they wanted to be a part of it.
Really, everything just exploded. I couldn't hear a thing. And the crowd behind me was, the Ironton fans are beautiful, man. To be an Ironton fan.
I still remember it being the loudest sound I'd ever heard.
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy. Especially after we won, they rushed the field. Oh my God. Kenny Frisk picking everybody up. It was just crazy.
It's like Christmas Day has come, a month early. And you open up the present and it's even better than you thought it was going to be. They walk off the field number one. They're the state champs.
I remember getting on the bus, sitting down, and we were getting ready to take off, and Lutz yelled out the door before it closed. He said something to the effect of, "Why don't you people learn how to play football up here?" Just screamed at him.
Until we got back, and I think it was around Willisburg or somewhere where the police escort came in. We come home, get to the parking lot to pull in, and there's a Volkswagen blocking our way. Some of them players got out, I can't remember which players it was, picked that baby up and moved it. It was awesome. That crowd was going crazy.
Fortunately for me, I was able to experience a little bit of an aspect different from everybody else. I got to play in the Akron River Bowl my career in college. And one thing I learned from the players that I played with up at Akron that played on that team was that those guys thought that was the greatest football game in the world. Even though they lost, they thought that that was a great football game.
But the 79 game, boy, just, you know, it was at a time when things were a little rough locally as far as the economy went. I'm sure some of the families of the football players were feeling that. There were layoffs, and it was tough. So it gave a gritty town like Ironton something to, you know, really grab a hold of and hang on to in winning it, and the elation. And it was what I've called the float after the fact, after the guys won the championship. And it was just like this good feeling float for a really long time. It didn't make the tough things go away, but it took some of the edge off of it.
Their coach, the next year we got beat in the first round at home by John Glenn, and he was upset because we got beat because he was wanting another shot at us.
Well, I think we started winning in that era, you know, the 70s, and it permeated over, just kept going. You always thought you were going to win. The 78 team didn't make it because, I'm sure you've already said this tonight, about Logan being on strike, and that team never had a close game all year. At 79, we still knew we had some skill, we just didn't have as big a lineman. And the questions were in the line, but they answered and they played well, and Ironton didn't have a reputation back then that they got now.
Living in Florida now, when I meet people and they say they're from Ohio, and I tell them that I coached at Ironton, and if they say that they don't know anything about it, I said, well, then you don't follow high school football if you don't know about Ironton, because we're always at the front.
It meant a whole lot. It meant a whole lot. It meant a whole lot to all of us. It still does. It still does. You know, it's one of my, 79 is one of my best memories, one of my crowning, besides the birth of my children and my grandchildren.
It's why the little kids sit at the end of the stadium each Friday night with their legs dangling over the side thinking one day I might be out there on that field and be a fighting Tiger. And I think the guys of the 79 team and subsequent teams since then, 89 team as well, kind of set the tone for this is what can happen if you do what you're supposed to do and you're in the right place at the right time and you're prepared and you do your absolute best. And that's what I think of when I think of the 1979 team.
Future Fighting Tigers. This isn't really advice or anything, but I think I just want to be known that the third and the fourth and the fifth state title teams need to show up.
Well, I think the advice I would say is that we're from a small town in Ohio, on the Ohio River, called Ironton, Ohio, and most of the world doesn't even know where Ironton is or what Ironton even means. But one thing I can say is that in 1979, there are 3 classes of football teams in the state of Ohio: single A, double A, and triple A. And in 1979, a team from Ironton, Ohio, with a few guys, went up and knocked out Akron St. Vincent St. Mary, one of the most prominent football programs in the nation, that put players on Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, all the great colleges, and we took them down 7-6. And so you can win, and you have to believe in yourself. We believed in ourselves. We kept ourselves clean. We went up there and said, you know what, we're not going to give up on this game. Even though the odds are totally against us, we're going to give it our best shot. And we won that football game fair and square.
What you do, you stay out of trouble, you get your grades, you work hard, listen to your coach, buy into the program, don't forget where you come from, and once a Tiger, always a fighting Tiger.